Truth does not fear error. Error cannot tolerate truth. So you're in the courtroom. The fellow says that he's arrested for breaking in and stealing this ATM. And his lawyer says, no, 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 he was off in Arizona, and here's the slips where he's having dinner with his sister, and they go on and on and on. It doesn't matter because you have a picture of his truck driving up before the ATM. His face is taken as he goes up there and punches it numbers. You have his fingerprint. You have a video of him putting it in the back of his truck and driving off. And that truth will overcome any of the lies that the other one tells. So therefore, the only way he can succeed is he has to prevent the presentation of truth. That's why liberals always shout down conservatives. That's why colleges don't allow conservatives to speak. That's why we do not shout down. We don't go around and harass liberals for speaking. They can speak anywhere, any place, anytime. But they cannot tolerate us being allowed to do it. Let me give you a quick example. I've heard people often complain about the fact that why is it that people pick on Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, and the Washington Times. Washington Times, Rush Limbaugh, and the Fox News. On and on and on. When they own everything. They own AP, UPI, Washington Post, the New York Times, Reuters, on and on and on. Why do they care about a little paper called the Washington Times? Because truth overcomes error. And if you do want, so I was riding in the car one day, and I heard on the radio that the president had said, President George Bush had said, that we no longer need to fear Al-Qaeda. It was no longer a problem. And they then cut away to Dominic de Villepin, who was the foreign minister of France, who was castigating President Bush for saying that. And I'm thinking as I'm riding along in the car, why did he say that? You know, and I heard it all day long, and I heard it all during the evening news. But the next morning, the Washington Times did this. They took the actual quote as to what President Bush had said, and he said this. They talked about the 52 cards. Remember, he had the 52 leaders of Al-Qaeda on the 52 cards, and they asked him about it. He said, well, the fact is that 42 of them are either dead or incarcerated. Either way, they're no longer a threat. They then had what the New York Times had said, that Al-Qaeda ... no longer a threat. And so one newspaper, the Washington Times, put both of the quotes together, and truth overcomes error. You could see what they did. Rush Limbaugh spent 3 hours talking about it on the news, and Fox News did it in its loop, so that it revealed that no matter how many newspapers they had, no matter how many television outlets they had, the lies were overcome with the truth. And let me just encourage you to watch, to go see the movie America by it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference how many textbooks lie. Truth overcomes error. By the way, God is truth. The Pilate asked Christ, what is truth? Christ said, I am the way, the truth. Now, what does that mean? Let me explain. Let me say that this platform is 24 feet wide. You might say it's 23, you might say it's 28, you might say it's 31. We measure it, and the measurement is truth. And everything else is just opinion. Because it's only so wide, and once it's identified as exactly how, that is the truth, and everything else is just opinion. God said that he is truth. Everything else is just opinion. And our founders were committed to the idea of founding our nation upon truth. We hold these truths. Now, that's enough to deny you tenure at most colleges, and right there, just the fact you believe in a truth. We hold these truths to be self-evident, which is a gracious Jeffersonian way of saying any idiot ought to understand this. You could be blind, deaf, and dumb, and this is self-evident that all men are. No. They just crawled out of the primordial slime and said, "Let's write a symphony." You know, that brain just got there by accident. You know, it took millions of years to develop a liver. If you could live for millions of years without a liver, why would you develop one? I mean, the very idea doesn't. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by a 5-4 vote of the Supreme Court. And this is significant, are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And among those are life. Oh, no, wait, no, I don't want government involved in the bedroom. No, that's between a woman and a doctor. I don't think government ought to be involved. I mean, we need to focus on economic issues. We don't want, no, you're in the wrong country, honey, because it says right there in our birth certificate, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. This is what government does. Don't tell me protecting life is above your pay grade. I don't care if you're a dog catcher or president of the United States. The purpose of the American government is to preserve life and then liberty. Notice the sequence. Liberty is a precious little value. If you're dead, you have to have life first, life, then liberty, then the pursuit of happiness. And our opponents, our other side, spent their entire purpose trying to do with liberty. They fought for the whole purpose of preserving slavery. Blacks always had rights in most of America. People forget that. They were denied where the Democrats were in control. Blacks voted forever in America. They held public office. But in some places, that party was committed to taking their liberty. Until finally, we won't get into too much history here, but you might as well know it. Slavery was diminishing. It was atrophying. It was going to disappear. Nobody hated slavery more than our founders, particularly John Quincy Adams, who dedicated his entire life to the destruction of slavery. When he was defeated in 1828, he went back in the Congress. He introduced a bill every day to do away with slavery. Finally, they passed the Adams rule, saying, you can only do this once. I mean, you got the point. Yesterday's will work. For each session, you only do it once. But he was defeated by the only genuine pro-slavery president, a man who bought slaves in New Orleans and sold them up the Tennessee River, who believed in slavery and revitalized the idea of having slavery. And so then he brought in a new slave state and restored something that was almost dead. And we then had what was called the Jacksonian era from 1830 to 1860. And it went back and forth and back and forth and back. I mean, that was the only thing that they could deal about. And it tore the country apart. And it was the main issue all the time. The Democrat Party wanted slavery and the Whigs didn't. And Daniel Webster and Henry Clay fought to do away with it until finally in the late 1850s, the Whig Party said, enough. We got to do something better than this. We can't just argue about slavery all the time. If you don't want to have a slave, don't have one. But we got to move on. And with that, the party disappeared. In the matter of 36 months, a new party erupted for the single purpose of protecting and doing away with liberty. It's called the Republican Party. It took power, and it fought the Democrat Party, who was dedicated to the preservation of slavery. And when they defeated them at the end of the Civil War, most of us thought that would be the end of it. But they still wouldn't give blacks equality, and so we said we're going to have to amend the Constitution, not to give everybody new rights, but rather to make sure you can't deny people rights. And so they passed the 14th Amendment to treat everybody equally. You want to know how many Democrats voted for the 14th Amendment? In the House, how many? How many in the Senate? And so then we thought, well, that would take care of it. But no, not only were they equal under the law, they still wouldn't let them vote. Where? Not in America. Don't blame that on us. The Democrat Party wouldn't let them vote. And where the Democrats were in control, they wouldn't allow them to vote. And so we amended the Constitution not to give blacks the right to vote, but to deny states the authority to deny them the right to vote. And so we passed the 15th Amendment to say you can't deny a person a right to vote based upon their skin color. How many Democrats voted for that? Zero. Not a single one. So we fight as best we can. We try to force equality of liberty. We finally win that fight after 100 years, go in and break up the South. And once we get rid of the one-party rule down there, all the stuff that they complain about, the Jim Crow laws, and all, America didn't pass a Jim Crow. The Democrats passed the Jim Crow law. They talk about Rosa Parks couldn't sit in. That was a privately owned bus company. Private bus companies don't mistreat their customers. They let them sit wherever they wanted to. It was the Democrat City Council that passed a resolution that said she couldn't sit up front. Don't be blaming that on America. Don't be blaming it on Republicans. You guys are the ones that did all that. Now we've kind of won that, and so now they're off on life. Now they want to take life. They want to deny people life. That's a preliminary I'm not going to get to my main part of my speech, which is I'm rounding second now. Let's get back on what America is. 4% of the population of the world call themselves Americans. For thousands of years, people had hoped to someday fly. It was the Americans that invented the airplane, and the light bulb, and the telegraph, and the telephone, and the global positioning system, and the internet, and the cell phone, and the air conditioner. Every year, Americans write more books, more plays, more symphonies, more copyrights, more inventions than the other 96% combined. They create more wealth than the rest of the world. We love to talk about poverty. I tell you, Americans just talk about how horrible this place is. One of the poorest states in the Union, we call it Louisiana. Louisiana, if you took the fourth largest nation on earth, the largest Muslim nation on earth, 400 million people. It's the place where our president grew up, by the way. He was asked in 2008 what he knew about foreign policy. His answer was correct. He said, I didn't grow up in America, and I see America from a different perspective. He's exactly right. He never played Little League. He never went to Vacation Bible School. He never was a Boy Scout. He doesn't see America. He grew up in a place where the combined GDP, the gross domestic product of the fourth largest nation on earth, is smaller than the state of Louisiana. The sixth largest nation on earth, smaller than the state of Arkansas. 91 million Filipinos. 91 million Filipinos produce less GDP every year than 3 million Oklahomans. America is abundantly blessed. Half of all the people on earth live on less than $2 a day. Half of those live on less than $1 a day. The second richest spot on earth is Western Europe, France, Germany, Britain. In America, we have a level below which we will not permit a person to sink. You come to this country, sit down on a park bench, put your feet up, gripe and moan about our country, we will bury you. Unlimited health care, food stamps, a place to stay, air conditioning, cable, a telephone. A person living in poverty in America. Rector study, Heritage Foundation, Wall Street Journal, done every 24 months. A person living in poverty in America is more likely to have a telephone, a television, an air conditioner, an automobile, eats more meat, and has more square footage space than the average resident of the second richest spot on earth, Western Europe. Now the question would be, why? And it's important that we know the answer to that question, lest we elect someone who wants to fundamentally change America, and there'll be no place else for us to go. 3 quick points, and then I'm through. It works like this. Economics. I'm now going to give you in 5 minutes, I majored in economics, by the way, so I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you 95% of all the economics you'll ever need to know the rest of your life. It works simply like this. Let us suppose that this represents 100% of your income. The 100% of the income of any city, a state, or a nation. Let us say it represents a $100 bill. And you go into Walmart, and the most expensive thing in Walmart is $99, and you have 100. That means you are completely free to choose anything in the store. Now, let us suppose that someone comes along and takes 25% of it away from you. 2 things happen. You have fewer choices. There's some things you can no longer choose. Thomas Jefferson said freedom is having choices. The more choices I take away from you, the less freedom you have. Anybody ever had a teenager understands this debate. I want my own freedom, not as long as I'm paying the bills, young lady. So the fact is that the more I take away from you, you have fewer choices, less freedom, and a lower standard of living. If you're not with the New York Times, this is really quite elementary. Otherwise, it would be a profundity. But nevertheless, the more money we take away from you, suppose they take 50% away. What happens? Fewer choices, less freedom, lower standard of living. Let us suppose we take 75% away. Fewer choices, less freedom, lower. Suppose we take it all. What do we call a person who works all day long and keeps absolutely nothing? That person is called a slave. Now, there are only 2 people that can take money away from you. One is called a criminal, has a gun, and can take money away from you. The other is called the government, has a gun, and can take money away from you. And here's the point. The impact is the same. Fewer choices, lower standard of living. And so, you go to the pay window. You're walking across the parking lot out to your truck. A fellow comes up, puts a gun in your ribs, says, I want 50% of everything you got. You go home, you sit down with your wife and children. This is how much money we have for food. This is how much money we have for vacation. Or you make it all the way to your truck, you open it up, Uncle Sam's already been here. The impact is the same. Now here's the principle. This is so you tell everyone, your children, here's how to vote. Here's the principle. The greater the freedom, the greater the wealth. The greater the government, the greater the poverty. And it only works this way every time. You show me. Let me just hit it again. This is what we're voting on. You show me what percentage of the gross domestic product of any nation, any city, any state is taken by government, and the principle applies. If you understand this principle, you can make any rich place poor, or you can make any poor place rich. In the 1950s, the richest city on the planet, not marginally so, by 18 to 20%, by far and away the richest city on the planet was a place called Detroit, Michigan. At the same time, that was the richest spot on earth. Having divided Korea at the 38th parallel, Korea was third from the bottom. Of all the nations on earth, it was third from the bottom. But if you understand this principle, you can make any poor place rich. You can make any rich place poor. And today, South Korea is the 10th largest GDP on the planet. Detroit is the poorest city in the Western Hemisphere. 48,000 single-family homes are not uninhabited, are uninhabitable. The city of Detroit advertises now in various magazines. They show where they've taken these beautiful homes and beautiful tree-lined streets and bulldozed it all, and so now it's nothing. It's all empty. And said, come, you have all the infrastructure. You know, they don't point about the drugs and the rats and all that, but nevertheless, it's all this clean area to come locate. It's available here. They will destroy anything. 25 years ago, Ohio was #1 in new job creation. We were 38th of the 50 states, 12th from the bottom, in tax burden. We said, we can put a stop to this. And so we began increasing taxes to the point we got to #3, higher than Massachusetts. And at this moment, Ohio is 49th out of the 50 states. 49th out of the 50 states in new job creation. And for the first time in history, Ohio Buckeyes are saying, thank God for Michigan. If you understand it, you can make any rich place poor. You can make any poor place rich. All right, say, Bob, that's the way it works. Let's go one step further. Tell me why. It works like this. Suppose you're going to buy something for yourself. You care about two things. You care about price and quality. And nobody can make that decision as well as you can. You might pay $4 for a cup of coffee at 7 in the morning, for which you wouldn't pay 50 cents at 3:30 in the afternoon. When it's your money buying something you want, you get the maximum. You stand there and look at that car. How much is it worth to me? What is the quality I'm going to receive? How much is it going to cost? When you're spending your money for your purpose, you care about price and quality. And I don't care how much you love the other person, you simply cannot make decisions on their behalf as well as they can do it for themselves. That's called a first-party purchase. Number 2. Let us suppose that one of those things is not controlled by you. Let's suppose that you're going to buy something for someone else. Do you care about the price? Yep. But you're a little more flexible on the quality. Green, I think she'll like it. And then, let's see, by the time this breaks, they'll be married 4 years. They'll forget who gave it to them anyway. This will be fine. We've all bought things for people we never would have bought for ourselves. We've all received things as gifts we never bought. We care about the price, yes, because we're paying for it. We're not concerned about the quality. Let us suppose it's the other way around. Let us suppose we're going to consume it, but we're not going to pay for it. So the waitress comes around and says, you know, would you like to have some orange juice with your breakfast? And you say, well, how much is it? And you say, well, it's $3.25. No, really, I'm fine. I'm right. Oh, no, it's complimentary. It comes with your meal. Well, in that case, I'll take 3 glasses. You know, you might walk off and leave half a glass. You wouldn't if you were paying for it. You care about the quality because you're consuming it. You don't care about the price because you're paying for it. You're not paying for it. That's called a second-party purchase. Remember that part right there? We're going to come back in just a second. Final example. Let us suppose that where you work, everybody that comes to work late has to put $5 in the kitty. And at the end of the month, they take all the money in the kitty and they raffle it off. And it's the last day of the month. The boss says, John, count the money in the kitty, see what it is, buy something with it, we'll raffle it off. You count, there's $150 in the kitty. So you go to lunch, you're coming back and think, oh my goodness, I got to do that. What am I? And you look around, and there in the store window is a 6-foot-tall stuffed frog. And you go over and you check the price, $149. Perfect, this is great. You buy the frog, you take it back, you shove it in the closet. At the end of the day, the boss invites everybody down, lectures to them about being late. Everybody draws a number to see who wins. Sally wins. What does she win? Open the door, big 6-foot-tall frog. Everybody laughs and claps. Oh, this is so wonderful. Go out and shove it into her car. They cheer. She drives off the parking lot. What's that called? That is called a third-party purchase. A third-party purchase is purchasing something with money that's not yours, therefore you don't care about the price, to purchase something you will not personally consume, therefore you do not care about the quality. Now, they tell you in public speaking that when you're going to say something profound, that you are supposed to pause for emphasis. I am now going to pause for emphasis. Because what I'm about to say is not Democrat, Republican, Labor, Christian Democrat, Socialist. This is just the facts, Jack. That by definition, all government purchases are third-party purchases, made with money that's not theirs to purchase things they will not personally consume. Therefore, will there be waste in the highway department? You betcha. Will there be waste in the defense department? You can count on it. That's why we believe, as Abraham Lincoln said, the government should do only those things which a man cannot do better for himself. Why? Because every time we take a dollar from an individual to save and invest and use to the maximum benefit of themselves and their family and run it through a third-party system called government, we're in the process of making the nation poorer. And you show me what percentage of the GDP of any city, any state, or any nation, and the principle applies, the greater the freedom, the greater the wealth, the greater the government, the greater the poverty. Now, your brother-in-law says, well, that all sounds good, but government's got to help people. And so therefore, it's ignoble if I just come and steal it out of your billfold, but if I hire Joe Schmo over here and he's the city guy and he steals it from you, well, then it's noble, and so because I'm compassionate and I care. Let me just hit that for a second. For these preachers that tell us we should vote to do this, I speak at Christian colleges a lot. Tony Campolo and Jim Wallace and these people come along and they take these little kids and they say, you know, Jesus never spoke about abortion. Jesus never spoke about homosexuality. But he had a lot to say about helping the poor. He had a lot about helping your neighbor. And you know, these right-wingers, they're always talking about abortion. And they're always talking, but how much do they really, who do we want to follow? Do we want to follow the haters? Or do we want to be like Jesus? It's not a complicated question from here. Tom DeLay said it. The Bible established 3 institutions: the church, the family, and government. Helping the poor was mentioned 278 times, according to David Barton. 2/3 of the time, he mentioned you and me taking care of the poor. 1/3 of the time, he mentioned the church caring for the poor. And what I do is I just lay the Bible up there and said, I don't need a book, I don't need a chapter. Give me a verse, any place, anywhere, where God ever called upon a politician to take the police power of the state and take from one person and give to another. And when he does, I'll sign up. In the meantime, I'm going to stay with creating abundance that blesses the poor and creates a freedom for everybody. So, with that little sideline, how do we create wealth? And then I'm done. There's a car going down the road out here. There's only 2 ways I can get money out of that person's pocket that's driving down that road. One is called free enterprise. Free enterprise is where I lay awake nights trying to figure out a way to do something good for that person such that they'll slam on their brakes, pull in and say, oh, you're going to make my car all nice and clean? Well, that's much better, worth a lot more to me than this $10 bill. Or I'd much rather have that pair of shoes than this $50. I'd rather have that global positioning unit than this $200. I figure out ways to do something for them, and then we make an exchange in which at the end of the exchange, we are both better off. In fact, we are wealthier than we were before. We have created wealth. And that is the only way wealth is created. That's abundant truth. Let's hit it just one more time. Here's a farm. Here's a baker. A baker's got 10 empty ovens. Here's a farmer. He's got a pile of wheat. The baker says, you know, if I had that wheat, I could make donuts in the morning and I'd be in business. But this farmer says, nothing I can do with this wheat. If I had his money, I could get a new tractor. I could put a new roof on the barn. I could put gas in my airplane. He said, and so they decide to make an exchange. Now stick with me here. They decide to make an exchange, which at the end of the exchange, they are both better off. And if they're not, they don't make the exchange. The only way they do it is they are wealthier than they were before. And they have created wealth. And it is the only way that wealth is created. But I said I could get money out of that guy going down the road. I could get two ways. There's only one other way. Only one. It's called coercion. Coercion is where I come and I take it. I just take it. Now, when I take it, have I created wealth? Have I redistributed wealth? Yes, I have. From him to me. And the degree to which I have benefited myself is the degree to which he is diminished. Therefore, there is no creation of wealth. You cannot create a job without creating wealth. A farmer sits here, he's growing corn. Now he wants to create more corn. He has to have a profit to pay the person to help him to grow even more corn. As he generates wealth through his success as an entrepreneur, as a risk taker, as he creates wealth, he's then able to employ jobs and to create jobs, and that's the only way jobs are created. So, figure it out. A lady pulls up to the stoplight. A criminal comes over, looks at her purse on the front seat, says, I want 50% of everything in that purse. Question number one, has the criminal created wealth? No. Has the criminal redistributed wealth? Yes. Can the criminal create a job? No, because there's no more wealth than there was before. All right, let's don't call him a criminal. Let's call him a councilman. And the Detroit councilman comes over and says, I want 50% of everything in that purse. Has he created any wealth? No. Has he redistributed wealth? Yes. Can he create a job? No. Therefore, that's a good point, but he has not created a job. He has redistributed a job. And allow me to camp on that for a moment. So cash for clunkers. So I take money and I give them to go out and buy all these cars. And so the money that would have gone for a refrigerator or for a new tractor or for a lawnmower, I take that and I bribe them to buy, and then I stand out in front of the car dealership and say, look, you didn't create a daggone thing. Government cannot create anything. It can only redistribute. Government doesn't have anything. It doesn't first take from someone else. Only in the free market do you create. Government takes from someone, and the degree to which it takes is the degree to which it diminishes the other, degree to which it creates poverty. Liberals and socialists are in the business of creating poverty. It's what they do for a living. I sense the hook is coming. My job is up. I was asked to give you this story. It'll take me 3 minutes, and let's finish with this. It was 200 years ago this week. August 1814. The British had decided that they were going to take Americans off the high seas. Americans couldn't stop anybody, let alone the biggest power on the earth. But freedom emboldens people. The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. And Americans said, you're never going to put up with that nonsense. And so they went to war with Britain. And Britain attacked America. The last president to command troops was James Madison. He was preparing a leadership conference. Dolly Madison's preparing lunch in the East Room of the White House. A messenger comes running in and says that President Madison is not coming to lunch, but the British are. With that, she rips down the newly painted Peale photograph or painting of George Washington. She grabs the Abigail Adams silver urn and a picture of herself she'd received the week before, and ran out the front door. And those are the only 3 things that we have prior to that day, because the British came in, they ate the lunch, they enjoyed the afternoon, and then at night they laid it to the torch, and they burned the entire city of Washington to the ground, leaving only 4 walls of the White House and the Capitol, everything destroyed. Some months later, they passed a rule that you can never build another wooden building in the city of Washington, D.C. for precisely that purpose. And so having done that, they then, having destroyed the government, they were going to the second largest city and the fourth largest city and the second largest seaport, 40 miles away, by Baltimore. 35-year-old commander by the name of Armistead knew that in this war, for America to be defeated, they were going to have to come through that harbor. And at the entrance to the harbor was a fort called Fort McHenry, and he became commander. And so a year earlier, he knows it's coming. And so he went out and he commissioned Mrs. Pinkerskill, a maker of colors, to build a flag large enough. He designed it 42 feet long and 30 feet wide. 15 stripes, 2 feet apiece, and 15 stars. And folded it up for the day that the time would come that he'd have to use it. Well, in the march up to Baltimore, Americans, just freedom-loving Americans, came out to harass the enemy. They went through Upper Marlboro. The British got so mad they needed a doctor. They stole the doctor, Dr. Bean, from Upper Marlboro and took him with him. They then all gathered together to go down to Washington to hire a lawyer by the name of Francis Scott Key to negotiate to get their doctor back. Individuals can't negotiate with foreign countries. They went down to see President Madison. He said, well, I'll take Colonel Skinner here with you and see what you can do. So they rowed out to the Tonant, the commanding ship in the Baltimore harbor, and sought to negotiate an effort to get Dr. Bean back. They were ornery all day. They said no and mistreat him. While they were negotiating, Colonel Skinner had gone around and gotten letters of appreciation from the British soldiers that had been served by Dr. Bean. And at the end of the day, they threw all the letters. They said, this is what he's done. And the commander said, all right, fine, you can have him, but we're attacking tonight, so you're going to stay here until it's over. And so at that night, they attacked Fort McHenry in Baltimore. Why? Because Americans, not soldiers, not sailors, not Marines, just God-fearing, freedom-loving Americans had taken 22 of their own ships and sunk them in the entrance to the Baltimore harbor. And so they had to use a new creation called a concrete rocket. It had a timer on it. It was supposed to go over and land. As it would land, it would explode. But the timers weren't so good. They'd often blow up in midway. And so as they began 1,500 of these assaults all night long as the sun went down, and as it exploded, they could see that massive flag, that massive banner was still there. Until finally, about 1:30 in the morning, everything went quiet. Francis Scott Key, Dr. Bean, Colonel Skinner were scared. They didn't know what was happening. They figured the government's gone. If the military cannot defend us, our nation might not be here in the morning. What he didn't know was those same Americans, not soldiers or sailors, just people that loved their country, were willing to die for it, had gone out and laid in the bushes, in the lowlands where the ground assault would have to take place. And at 1:30 in the morning, when the British offloaded the ships to begin the land assault on Baltimore, those people stood up and confronted them. And by 4 in the morning, they withdrew, and that was the end of it. And he began to write, "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we had hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. The rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" But as it came up, they could see that it did. That America won and survived. They rode into the Queen Anne Hotel. He wrote 7 more verses, the last one being this, thinking of us here today. He said, "Oh, thus be it ever, that free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may this heaven-rescued land praise the power that has made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just. Let this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph will wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave." God bless.